He stood up at the school meeting and said, "I can still protect these children." The other parents burst into laughter. "You? At your age?" They mocked him, humiliated him, told him to sit down. But the real test came when the fire broke out. And at that moment, the only man who ran toward the flames was the old firefighter they had ridiculed. Welcome to The Last Witness. Before we begin this powerful story of courage and sacrifice, let me know in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe that real heroes never give up, hit that subscribe button. These stories need to be heard. Robert Bob Mitchell was 67 years old and had spent the last 3 years of his life living quietly. Retirement had never suited him. For 42 years, he had served with the Chicago Fire Department, responded to hundreds of fires, and saved more lives than he could count. But now, nobody wanted to know about any of that. People just saw an old, slow-moving man. On that cold March evening, there was an emergency parent meeting at his son's school, Pine Valley Elementary. The building's safety conditions were going to be discussed. Recent inspections had revealed some deficiencies, and parents were worried. When Bob arrived at the meeting, the other parents had already taken their seats. He quietly sat in one of the empty chairs in the back row. In his hand was a small notebook, the one where he'd written down everything he'd learned about fire safety over the years. Maybe today it would be useful. The school principal, Mrs. Sarah Henderson, began her speech. "Dear parents, the inspection report has identified some issues with our electrical system. Additionally, some of our fire escapes don't meet current regulations. We want to hear your thoughts on this matter." The room erupted. Parents began having anxious conversations. Are our children safe in this condition? When will these problems be fixed? What do we do in an emergency? That's when Bob stood up, slowly, with the weight of an experienced firefighter. The room fell silent. "Excuse me," he said in a calm voice. "I was a firefighter for 42 years. I have experience in these matters. If you'll allow me, I could make some suggestions for our children's safety." But he couldn't finish his sentence. A father in the front row, Michael Thompson, laughed. "Old man, how old are you?" 70 degrees. 67, Bob said calmly. 67 years old. Are you still trying to fight fires? The room burst into laughter. Another parent, David Johnson, took over. "Old man, you should be resting now. This stuff is for young men. Modern firefighting isn't what it used to be." Bob took a breath. "I just want to protect the children, regarding fire safety." "Old man," interrupted a third parent, Kevin Brown. "You can't even keep up with your own kid. We saw Tommy come last in the running race. The father's slow, so the kid is too." This remark cut Bob deeply, but his face showed no change. The principal tried to intervene. "Let's listen to Mr. Mitchell. Maybe." "No, Mrs. Henderson," said Michael Thompson. "These old men's time has passed. We need modern solutions. This man can barely stand on his own feet. How's he going to protect our children?" Bob sat down, quietly. He said nothing, but something was burning inside him, and outside the room, something nobody knew about was happening. The problem in the school's electrical system had just reached critical levels at that very moment. After the meeting ended, Bob quietly returned home. His son Tommy met him at the door. "Dad, how was the meeting?" Bob looked at his 12-year-old son's innocent face. Tommy didn't know what his father had gone through. "It went fine, son. Keep studying." That night, Bob couldn't sleep. His mind went back to past years. He remembered the Great Fire in downtown Chicago in 1985. That day, he had pulled 15 children out from among the flames. None of them had even thanked him. They didn't need to. He had just done his job. The apartment fire in Lincoln Park in 1992. That night, he had saved 23 families in 4 hours. He worked all night and was taken to the hospital in the morning. Smoke poisoning. But they had all lived. The factory fire in Pilsen in 2003. What he experienced that day still haunted his nightmares. To save the worker trapped in the flames, he had gone into the fire 3 times and succeeded on the 3rd try. The burn scar on his left hand from that day was still there. The next morning, when Tommy went to school, Bob followed him. He watched his school from a distance. He visually inspected the electrical system. He examined the fire escapes. His heart sank. The inspection report had been taken too lightly. This building was truly dangerous. That afternoon, he called the principal, Mrs. Henderson. Mrs. Henderson, this is Bob Mitchell. Last night I was thinking about the electrical system. Maybe I could examine. Mr. Mitchell, I understand you, but the parents trust us. We'll assign a professional team. Don't worry. But Mrs. Henderson, this is very urgent. If dot dot dot. Mr. Mitchell, thank you. Have a good day. The phone hung up. Bob didn't know that while he was having that conversation, a small spark had started in the school's basement, one of the faulty cables in the electrical panel. Nobody had noticed yet, but the fire had already begun. 2 hours later, at exactly 2:30 p.m., Tommy's class was having math. Class 3B was on the building's third floor. Tommy sat at a desk near the window and could see his father outside. Bob was sitting in the park across from the school, watching the building. That's when it happened. The first smoke came from the basement, then it spread to the corridors. Fire alarms started blaring. The school erupted in chaos. Teachers were running in the corridors. Children were panicking. Tommy was trying to get out of his classroom, but the corridor was filled with smoke. Parents waiting in the schoolyard began running around in panic. Where are my children? How will they get down from the third floor? Where are the firefighters? Michael Thompson, the man who had mocked Bob yesterday, was now screaming frantically, "Somebody do something. My child is on the third floor." David Johnson was calling the fire department on his phone. "Come immediately. The school is on fire." Kevin Brown, the man who had insulted Tommy, was now crying, "My son is in there too. What are we going to do?" That's when, while everyone was panicking, a man started running toward the school. Bob Mitchell, 67 years old, retired firefighter. He was running, with the same run he had never forgotten in 42 years, into the flames. The parents watched in shock. What is that old man doing? When Bob reached the school's main entrance, the inside was completely filled with smoke. But he knew. The fire was just beginning. He had very little time to save the children. He pulled out his handkerchief, pressed it to his mouth, and went inside. While climbing to the third floor, half the stairs were engulfed in smoke. But Bob had 42 years of experience. This smoke couldn't stop him. In the corridor, he could hear the children's voices. "Here, we're here." When he reached Tommy's classroom, 25 children were huddled together in the corner in fear. When Tommy saw his father, he started crying. "Dad, son, stay calm. I'm going to get all of you out." Bob looked at the children. It would be impossible to get them out one by one. He needed to use the fire escape, but the fire escape was broken. That's when an idea came to him. He opened the window. Parents had gathered below. "Everyone down there, wait for the fire trucks immediately. I'm going to get the children out from here." Michael Thompson shouted from below. "Old man, how are you going to get them out?" "That's the third floor." Bob didn't answer. He turned to the children. "Children, listen to me. I'm going to help you one by one. Nobody be afraid." Using the desks and cabinets in the classroom, he built a temporary ladder system. With his 42 years of experience, he began lowering the children to the window one by one. The first child, then the second, the third. But time was running short. The fire had spread to the corridors. Flames were beginning to appear behind the door. After the 15th child, Bob began to lose his breath. His 67-year-old body was getting tired, but he didn't stop. 20th child, 22nd child, 24th child. Tommy was left last. "Dad, how are you going to get down?" Bob looked at his son. Everything was in his eyes. All the love of a 67-year life. "You go down first, son. I'm coming right behind you." After Tommy went down, Bob was alone in the classroom. There were now flames behind the door. The exit route was blocked. But Bob didn't panic. His 42 years of experience kicked in. Even if the fire escape was broken, it wasn't impossible. Just more dangerous. He climbed out the window and grabbed onto the fire escape. Old hands, seemingly weak hands. But those hands had a story. They were hands that had saved hundreds of lives. Slowly, step by step, he climbed down. Below, all the parents watched in silence. When Bob's feet touched the ground, applause erupted. But he couldn't hear the applause. He just ran to his son and hugged him. "Dad, you're a hero." Michael Thompson, the man who had mocked him yesterday, came over. There were tears in his eyes. Bob, brother, I I apologize. You you really? Bob looked at him. No need. We just saved the children. That's what matters. David Johnson, the man who said, "This stuff is for young men," extended his hand. Bob, brother, we were wrong. You, even at this age, you're stronger than us. Kevin Brown, the man who had insulted Tommy, knelt down. Bob, brother, you saved my son. I don't know how to thank you. I'm very ashamed of what I said yesterday. Bob wasn't angry at any of them. He was just tired and happy. He had saved 25 children. This feeling, this was the feeling that had kept keeping him going for 42 years. When the fire department arrived, the fire was under control. It hadn't caused much damage to the building, but if the children hadn't been evacuated, the disaster would have been enormous. That evening, it was on the local news. 67-year-old retired firefighter saves 25 children single-handedly. But Bob wasn't watching the news. He was sitting at home with Tommy, drinking his tea. Dad, you're a real hero. Bob smiled. No, son. I just did what needed to be done. A hero is anyone who does their duty. Sometimes, children don't wonder about the past of people they see as old. They think they're weak. But real strength isn't in age, it's in the heart. Real courage is being able to run when everyone else is fleeing. Bob Mitchell didn't just save children that day, he changed society's perspective on the elderly. And most importantly, he showed his son that real strength never ages. In subsequent school meetings, they called Bob Firefighter Bob, and they listened carefully to his every word, because now they knew heroism isn't measured by age, it's measured by heart. Have you ever met someone like Bob? Someone who still shows heroism and sacrifice despite their age? Share their stories in the comments. These silent heroes shouldn't be forgotten. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. At The Last Witness, we continue to share real heroism stories. See you in the next story. Until then, don't forget the elderly heroes around you. Maybe they once saved the world too.